Hello and welcome to Prime Lenses. I'm Ian. Each episode, I speak to a photographer about 3 lenses that have really meant something to them on their photographic journey. Perhaps they use them every day in their kit bag, in their professional work, or maybe these are the things that they reserve for themselves in their spare time for their personal photos. Perhaps attached to a camera they used as a child, or perhaps ones that got away, never to be used again, maybe attached to a defunct film format or an iPod Touch even. My guest today is Ben Fraternale. He's a New York-based photographer, creative director, filmmaker, all-round person with many projects on the go at once. He's very big for business, and you probably know him from his YouTube channel in an instant. He was kind enough to sit down with me and talk to me about 3 lenses, one of which I think I was expecting, but 2 more which I definitely was not expecting, and at least one of those I might have to go and seek out and try out for myself. He's fantastic company, his channel is fantastic, please seek out his work if you haven't already, and I look forward to maybe the book that he might produce in time. But all of that's getting ahead of ourselves. Please welcome Ben. What I'll do is, just so you know, because as I said it for the thing, there's only 1 episode out now. So basically, I do the thing, I embarrass you in an introduction that you'll hear later. Which is nice, and just say how wonderful it is. It'll be something along the lines of like, people say don't meet your heroes, they have shit heroes. So and then we'll sort of like segue sort of seamlessly
cool.
into this. But how is the wonderful city of New York, and like how New York are you?
I'm pretty New York. I'm in Yonkers, which we like to call the 6th borough. We are technically the first city or the first thing north of the Bronx. So immediately when you're north of the city, you hit Yonkers, which is, as it happens, the 3rd largest city in New York unto itself, which not a lot of people know.
No.
But I'm always trying to give Yonkers, the love that it deserves. It's huge. But we live right on the border of like a suburban town, and so we've just got the like best of both worlds. Like we can see the city from our like deck thing, but we don't have to deal with like the hustle and bustle all the time. We can just sort of see grass and trees and things that are good. I like those.
No, definitely.
But I just got back, like, my head is still in San Francisco a little bit, from Policon, which was another whirlwind experience in SF. So, my brain is still sort of adjusting back to normalcy.
Yeah, the social media stuff that I saw around Policon, not just from you, but from other people who were there, it looked like a really great time.
Yeah, it's interesting how so Policon is so in an advanced stage now. It's like a festival that's in its, when you think about it, it's like 10 years since the first one, even though the first few were very casual. And so now, since they're building on each other so rapidly, and now there's 3 of them in different cities, like they're becoming more legit, but still in a way that's like wholesome. So like if we had a city block closed for us in San Francisco, like that would have been unheard of if you thought, if you went to the first Policon and you saw like it was basically a photo walk at the Dallas State Fair.
Yeah.
Now we're like, we've got city blocks closed. We've got a New York one with multiple large studios like hosting us. So it's become larger from like a capacity standpoint and maybe a production standpoint, but the peoples are still the same peoples and the same lovely faces you get to see a few times a year.
That's so good. That's great. How do you travel with all that like film? Because that's the thing. Is like one of the things I really wanted to sort of talk to you about was like the kind of, I guess, the practical nature of just how much product you produce. Because producing a load of files to handle is like legit annoying, right? Like managing Lightroom, managing files, having backups, like legitimately an annoying thing for everyone.
Oh yeah.
But you're making things, and they're sometimes the only copy of that thing. Like I shot some Polaroids at a family wedding once that were like, came out like much better than they should have done and were fantastic. And then you're like, I'm trapped in the Highlands with the only copy of this image that they might want to keep for the rest of their lives.
Yes.
Oh no. But how do you like travel with all that stuff, like both there and back? You're not like giving, you're giving some of it away. But
yeah, no, it's definitely a precarious thing, especially like the example that I could think of immediately was when I went to the Polaroid factory in the Netherlands, and then I took a train to Switzerland. All the while, I was carrying the film that I had shot with me and the film I had not yet shot. And I was capturing arguably one of the most like meaningful experiences of my life. And it was probably the first time where I was legit nervous that like
Mm.
this stuff is on me and I'm traveling like in a foreign country. I could easily have a scenario at security where something gets scanned or something is misplaced just due to me
Mm.
carrying bags across countries. So it is precarious, but I do also have systems in place to avoid any real trouble.
Yeah.
It depends on the shoot, how long it is, but sometimes I'll find labs on location.
Right.
So if I'm in California, for example, which I do end up there a lot, there's always a lab, so I can drop it off, and I've got ones that I trust. Same with like
Mhm.
Seattle, various cities that are like hubs for just jobs that I have to do and places I'm
Mhm.
shooting. But I've also gotten very good with the TSA people. They're kind.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
very. In the end, they get more and more lackadaisical over the years, and they just take a little swab and just move on. And so you end up. I keep it on me at all times, like it's in my
Yes.
backpack. I'm never
Got
putting
it.
it in another bag, even my roller
Yeah.
bag. Like it's on me,
Yeah.
on my body.
Yeah.
So it is a precarious and precious thing, but we've survived so
Yeah.
far.
No, that's really cool. I love it. It's funny on the subject of being swabbed. My Leica gets swabbed at
Really?
airports. I think it's so the M11 doesn't, but the M10 used to because it was made of brass. I think, and I think
Oh.
that thing going through a scanner. I don't think they see many kind of really
Mm.
solid, like basically a solid piece of brass going through a scanner, and they're just like, "What is that?"
That is
Um,
interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
so
So
yeah,
your bag always gets pulled off to the side?
so the camera bag would always get pulled off
Yeah.
to one
Damn.
side, irrespective of everything. But it was, but it's digital, so I'm not worried about like X-rays
Right.
and things
Yeah.
interfering with it. And it should be like handmade
Yeah,
properly
your
in
digital
Germany, right?
files are not at risk of getting any X-ray effects.
No, no. The most stressful thing with digital is like when you're trying to upload stuff or back it up using hotel Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
as
Oh my
opposed to
God,
like a
that's a
real. Then
nightmare.
then you're like, well, it's a similar perilous situation, but in theory,
Yeah.
like especially the newer cameras where they've got internal memory as well as
Mm-hmm.
a memory card.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of a little bit like, well, it's okay if the memory card fails because I've got an internal memory. Like I legit left the house the other day without a memory card, which is something I never
That's
do,
amazing.
and didn't notice because the
Right.
camera was just like, I'm cool, I've got space,
Yeah,
and
it's
didn't even,
amazing growing up with those cameras and they never had that. And I always wondered why they didn't have that. Like internal storage requires like 1 millimeter of like why not just
right?
come with it? Like even 8 gigs or
Yes,
something.
yeah,
So
just
thank God they're doing that
anything.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a lot better now for sure. And I think the reasons for not including it are kind of gradually, as we all know that they're nonsense, right? They're like the
Right.
extra $200 or whatever they charge you on a phone for like
Yeah.
the next increment up when it costs them
One
less
cent.
than just a
Yeah.
tiny amount. Like, but Tim Cook's Apple is the supply chain Apple, so that's
It's
why
true.
that's why they do it, right?
Yep.
Teams reflect their leads. But yeah, so we've
That
veered
was you like had
veered
that.
into. I know it's a thing I say a lot. I
Okay.
may have had a challenging day at work,
That's
but
all
this
right.
is the antidote, which is cool.
Okay.
Um, so you've traveled a little bit there. Like there's a little bit of like the management of files and things like or images and stuff like that. What put a camera in your hands in the first place? Because when I read your bio and your kind of description of you, there was a lot of like filmmaker, photographer, director, and stuff.
Right.
And I feel like because I discovered you like many people did via YouTube, and
Mhm.
there's this kind of like whip smart, snappy like presentation style, which is really lovely. And just like I feel like the world could have missed out on that. But like, so take us back on your origin story because it's very photography heavy, and then I want to get on to what made you then put stuff on YouTube at a sort
Right.
of a later
Okay.
point.
Yeah. So I grew up with a family of artists. Like my mom studied graphic design and photography at Atlanta College of Art, which is no longer a college. Her dad was a hand illustrator, and eventually an actor, and was always shooting as
Mhm.
well. And my dad's stepdad is or was a studio photographer at Milk Studios, which is one of the largest studios in New York. I never met him, but I like grew up with his cameras basically,
Right.
like surrounded by the stuff he left behind and his slides and everything. So I was definitely exposed to photography essentially immediately. Like my
Mm.
mom gave me a Polaroid camera when I was 2,
Right.
to just like
Yeah.
let's see what he does with it, because it would be funny to see what he does. And the photos are crazy, but it
Mm.
definitely got me like involved with that. And growing up in the age where digital took over, I started with film, went to digital, um, initially only to document the Arena Football League, which is a
Right.
sort of smaller version of outdoor football. It goes in like a hockey-sized arena, basically.
Hmm.
And that I just grew up loving that sport. I saw it on NBC one day when I was like 9 years old, and I was like, "What the hell is that? This looks insane." It's a football game played with walls. Like
Hmm.
players are crashing into the walls. It's extremely high scoring. It's like candy for a kid. And I'm just the type of person that doesn't let anything just be an interest. Like I
Right.
have to be involved in it. And so I was only like a little kid, but I was already like, we got to make like playing cards and get the players to sign them after the game. So, well, how do you do that? You have to like learn Photoshop. And then what are the photos you put on the cards? You got to take photos. And so it kind of just naturally forced me to learn a lot of things. Um, Including how to film, video, how to record audio, how to edit, how to make graphics for that as well. And I ended up making like a podcast. And through that whole experience, I became at age 16, like the social media. Well, it wasn't really social media, I guess, but like the
Hmm.
video producer for a team in Albany.
Oh wow.
And so I was getting like real deal experience at a very young age.
Hmm.
But my brain was still very journalistically focused. Like this is journalism. Like I'm
Hmm.
interviewing these players. And it's funny now because In an Instant is a little bit journalistic. But when I went to college, I assumed I want to be a journalist. I was
Hmm.
like editor in chief of the high school paper. Like that was just like where my head was at. And I dropped out of that within a month. I just realized I wasn't as interested as being a reporter as I was in filming and taking photos and
Right.
doing like the creative stuff that
Hmm.
makes stories sort of come to life. And that sort of just put me on the straight path to like, okay, now you got to figure out how to do all that while you're going to a college that doesn't offer any
Right.
resources for that. So that kind of put me on that track, and
Hmm.
it was all self learned and everything. And once I graduated from college, I moved to LA, and I was like, I'm going to be a LA director and
Right.
do all that. And that was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I went out there with no connections really, and I don't know
Right.
what I thought was going to happen, but I ended up moving home after not too long, and I got a job at a production company, and I got a job at NBC, which was
Hmm.
like I don't know. Are you aware of NBC?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They travel. Hmm.
Yeah, they travel. Okay. So I was at NBC and this production company for a few years, and I slowly just built this, not only the human connections that I needed to become like a freelancer, but also just the skills I needed to be like chiseled out because I didn't go to school for this. I needed like the practical
Yeah.
on location experience. And that kind of made me into a little photo and video professional. It spit me
Yeah.
out.
Oh, nice. It's funny you say about NBC. There's an old sort of adage in the UK quite often that goes back to the BBC. Like you go to the place if you want to learn things, you go to the
Yeah.
place where they do that, right? So like I knew a guy who was a pilot. He wanted to learn to fly, so he joined the RAF. He's like the Queen had more planes than anyone else, so I learned from her, right? Like the same. You want to learn production, you go to NBC or the BBC or
Right, right.
NPR or whatever. Whatever your poison, right? Like you learn. Yeah, learn from those people. It's funny you've said the journalistic thing as well. That totally makes sense now in terms of it bleeds through as an
It does
influence
a little bit,
in
I
an
feel.
instant.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought about that too much, but it definitely is connected. Um, and so just to, I guess to get to the like origin of that,
Mm,
so I was becoming reinvested in analog things just due to the volume of digital stuff that I was producing every day.
right.
I'm so busy. I do so many productions at once, whether it's like a personal project and a client project, and like three of those at once. And I was just getting kind of like, okay, I'm doing this for work. Like
Hmm.
that is what I do for work. And there, as much as I love what I do, there is always a feeling of like, I want some other thing to play with.
Right.
That's because I do what I love, and so I kind of want something that's like for me, I
Yeah.
guess. And so I've discovered over time that like that's what film was to me,
Hmm.
and I became obsessed with the history of it and the nitty gritty of it and how everything works and who the people are that made it work,
Hmm.
and just everything about it is so rich and interesting, and the people that even love it are rich and interesting. Like the
Yeah.
fans and the shooters are really interesting, and the community is so loving. It's like this whole other world,
Mm.
and I just slowly gravitated toward it. And right before I started that YouTube channel for like 5 years, I was doing, and back to the Arena Football League, I was doing a series essentially, not like in an instant, more like filmic, I guess you would say,
Mm-hmm.
like highlight reels and short films about the league and the players. And that was basically my in an instant for like 6 years.
Right.
And I've essentially switched to doing like an instant film YouTube channel with my free time. So that's that's how we ended up doing that.
That's awesome. I love that. I was gonna ask whether it was like related to like the antidote to work almost. Like it's sort of because it feels like it's one of those things where like these are for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the feeling of starting a YouTube channel was uh weird at first, especially
Mm,
if you're in the industry of making content for a living. It
right.
feels odd to make a YouTube. At least at the time, it felt weird. I think it doesn't feel as weird now, but it felt weird to like make. I didn't tell any of my colleagues that I was doing this. I didn't tell like even some of my friends. I was like a little bit embarrassed that I was starting a YouTube channel. Now I'm realizing I like shouldn't have been, but
Mm,
it was a little bit like, what am I doing here? And I was pretty like timid about it. I recorded like 8 episodes before I even launched the channel because I wanted to like see what this would even look like
right.
and whether it was any good. And I didn't
Mm,
even know if it was any good, really. But when I first posted it, I mean, within 3 weeks, it was already getting some traction. So I felt good about continuing to do it. But yeah, it ended up being, especially because so much of the channel has existed in the COVID/post-COVID era.
mm,
It
mm.
became the like antidote to everything, not only work,
Yes.
but just like the world is insane. What can I control and what can I do with my time? And it
Yeah.
became the thing that I could do and still do.
Yeah. That it's what it was for us. Like because
Yeah.
for those listening at home, like my son and I watched like all through pre-COVID and through COVID, like that in an instant was a thing that when the youngest one was being put to bed and the eldest one feels like he can stay up a little bit later, like
Yeah.
in an instant is about the length of time you want your eldest one to stay up later, right? Like
Right,
it
right,
was sort of
right. Yeah.
your episode length is kind of perfect, and that's where he really developed a love and like an interest off the back of your productions, and
That's
that's
so
why
cool.
it's brilliant. And
That's
that's why when
amazing.
putting these conversations together, I was like, I have to try and talk to Ben because it's been such a little touchstone for the pair of us. And I know that when he's older and he's got his Polaroid camera, he's going to talk to someone, whether it's on a thing or in a pub or whatever. He's going to talk about getting his first Polaroid and watching it in an
Wow.
instant and things like it's we've been doing them again, watching them again recently. And we were watching like the Instax Mini the other night,
Oh
and
yeah. That's
myself then. So
unbelievable to hear. I mean,
it's so
it's
cool.
like the best possible thing I can ever hear because I'm only doing it to like spread the love of it. And so
Mm,
when that like reaches a destination, it's the best possible result.
yes.
Like I was saying that it's for me in some ways, but it's also for other people.
Mm,
And I always make content or whatever I'm producing, it's with the thought of who is receiving it. And that's sometimes not always the case, in my opinion, with some YouTube videos and some YouTube
right.
channels where it feels like you're documenting something, but why am I watching it? Like it's
Mm,
not like providing value necessarily beyond
right.
showcasing you. And so that was always such a important thing to me. So to hear something like that is so lovely. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. It's nice to be able to say it to someone. It's like the opposite of that character in Hitchhikers, who's going around
Yeah.
the universe. It's like I'm going to call every creator who's ever meant something and just go, "Is your name Ben? You rock," and then
Oh,
and
that's
then
so
dive out the door.
nice. I wish I could hug you through the friggin' screen, but
Oh,
it's
you can bring it in.
unfortunately it's
Um,
like
Well, look, one day,
yeah,
the way the
we'll figure it
universe
out.
operates, we'll
We'll
figure it
figure it
out.
out. Yeah, yeah.
But that's so that we don't lose sight completely of the conceit and the pretendy reason that the excuse for calling you up.
Sure.
That's a nice segue onto your first lens choice, which was the only one of your three that I think I expected. Like, I
Okay.
think if this hadn't been on the list, I'd have been very surprised. So your first, you should probably tell, like your first lens choice was.
Yes, my first lens choice was the 116 millimeter f8 lens on the Polaroid SX70 cameras, which is also shared with the SLR 680, SLR 690, pretty much every folding
Mhm,
Polaroid camera with a glass lens for 30 years.
yeah.
It's to me such a touchstone lens because it informs you what instant film can be.
Mhm,
It's at first, I think when anyone thinks of Polaroid, they think of the 80s cameras, the cameras that were the plastic cameras that are more snapshot style cameras. And the moment you hold an SX70 and the moment you focus with an SX70 and you focus with that lens, you
mhm,
get to see, oh, this is like something much more immersive than that. This is something much more art driven than that. And you can control so much more just by being able to manually focus
Mm,
and achieve images that are rendered the way that a glass lens can. And especially one that was produced in like the height of the engineering of cameras. It's
mm.
so beautiful to use. And so that lens is like, it changed, I would say like it changed everything for me, just my perception of Polaroid.
It's funny. I have a Sofort,
Yeah.
the Leica Instax, and Alice bought it for me, my wife, as a joke years ago. She was like, "This will be the only Leica you ever own,"
Oh my
and
God.
bought it. But it was funny because I made some photos with that very early on, and the first thing she said was like, "Is this like different film?" And I was like, "No, no, no. That's the great thing. Like, as mad as those people in Wetzlar are, like they put a slightly better lens
Right.
on this Fuji camera." And suddenly the performance is way, way better because it turns out that's the secret weapon, isn't it? It's like it's always glass. It's not the sensor. It's not, modern cameras. It's not the body or the film. Like if you put better glass on the front, that's where
That's
you'll see
true.
the difference. And it's the same. I have an SLR 680, which I purchased from a small place you might have heard of called Brooklyn Film Camera.
Oh yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, yeah. I may have had a conversation during the pandemic, like, hey, I'm not like paying for gas money anymore. Can I? But yeah, it's a fantastic camera and I love it to bits. But you're right, it's night and day, isn't it?
Yeah,
Compare when you see one for the first time.
it's like a watershed moment, I feel like, for most
Mm,
people. And it's interesting you point out the glass thing. I mean, I feel like the i2, which is the newest Polaroid camera,
mm,
the newest high-end sort of SX70 replacement, I guess they're trying to make it,
mm,
isn't glass. And that's like
mm,
that was a very difficult thing for, I think, a lot of people to comprehend. Why
mm,
would it not be glass? It's still not totally clear to me why it's not glass, to be clear. Um,
mm.
but I also can fully acknowledge that the polycarbonate or whatever the heck they've done with it is as sharp as the SX70.
Yeah.
So it bucks a lot of like my expectations, everyone's expectations for
Mm,
what a lens is and what it should be, because
yeah.
I think no one thought that's what the i2 lens should be. And yet
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really as good. And it's f8
Yeah.
lens and it's sharp wide open, and like it's hopefully going to shepherd the next generation of people who want to acquire that look and something fresh out of Polaroid. And so,
Mm,
yeah, I love that we've now got sort of both things in the mix. You can have
yeah.
both, and they can both exist.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing, and that's the other reason for, I guess, having these sorts of conversations is there's a lot of fustiness and
Yeah.
rules around things, and I think the minute that we attach rules to people being creative and enjoying themselves, like the thing I talk about a lot on the podcast is about, it's not, in many cases, it's not our job, right?
Hmm.
Like I have to I've taken my camera and lenses to the MotoGP and felt like I have to get coverage. And it's
Right.
like, I'm just here to enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
it's not, the guy, episode 3, where I interviewed this guy, Rob, who shoots MotoGP for reels, right? And his
Yeah.
images are flipping incredible. They're like sharp and bright, but they're also
Yeah.
like paintings. They're just amazing. I genuinely don't know how he does a lot of it. It's amazing. Um, and I don't want to, like, I want the mystery to last. But it's like, that's things like, that's not my job. That's his
Right.
job.
Right. Right.
He
Right.
should do. I should just go and have a small bag of stuff. And I met someone like walking around and just like killing themselves in the heat carrying gear. And it's like, what if I just took one lens and just had a laugh? It's
Yeah.
fine.
I
Like
can't imagine doing it, but I'm proud of you for doing that. I've
I
never been
tried.
the type of guy who could
Oh,
limit
it's so good.
themselves to just one thing, but that's a curse that I just have to live with.
Yeah, well, I have my one camera rule, but it doesn't seem to apply to instant film cameras. And I
Okay.
was watching your i2 video again last night and thinking, I mean, I don't have one. I have an i1. I don't have an i2, and there's a lot of Polaroid film behind me on the
Yeah.
shelf. Like it's just waiting.
It's
You
true.
know
If you don't have one, the alternative would be having one.
exactly
Yeah,
right,
that's really
right.
interesting.
And
Yeah.
it's funny. I worry about getting into trouble for having another camera. But there was one time, the Keith Haring Polaroid Special
Yeah.
Edition,
Yeah.
right? So I wanted one because it's beautiful, but
Sure.
I didn't need another 600 series Polaroid camera.
Yeah.
And then on eBay, I found a display model from a shop. It was
Really, that's
boxed,
so cool.
and it's on the shelf behind me. And it's just, in fact, hang on,
Yeah, why not?
let's do that. Look, it's a real, like, it looks like a real Polaroid,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. I have one of
It's got the
those, but I didn't
lens.
even know that like existed for other kind of special editions. That's really cool.
Yeah. So like, I was like, this is perfect, and it was 30 quid, and so I bought it, and it came,
That's
and
a steal.
it Yeah, and it looks just like the real thing. And so I said to Alice, "Look, I got this thing," and she was like, "I don't know if that's more annoying that you
Yeah, it
have one that
might be
isn't
more
real."
annoying. It doesn't even work.
It's
We
like it
just
doesn't
we
even
just
work.
invested in a substantial. It was just a substantial investment into transparent Polaroid cameras that are
Oh,
also
yes,
non-functioning.
yes.
And Lauren, my wife, had a very similar reaction. Like, I'm not sure why you did this, but
Are
I'm
these the
sure
box
that
ones
this is
from the
good.
80s, right? Like
These
the
are
see-through.
new. These are
Oh,
like
new.
really rare, directly from people that worked in the factory. Transparent I2, Go,
No.
a couple others. It's like a crazy haul. I'm not sure yet
Yeah.
how to like handle the fact that I own these. Like it's A,
Yeah.
irresponsible to own them, frankly. B, it's like I have to display them obviously in our new
Yes.
studio, but C, it's like should I even show that I own this? Like it's almost irresponsible to own them. But what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? You know, I had to
No.
have it.
Yeah, of course. It's brilliant. So I work my day job is working in video games, and I know people who have source code to things from a long time ago, and it feels a bit like that. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
it's on a floppy disk. It's like I've got the source code to the original whatever, and it's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're like, I feel like I shouldn't have this. It's like, yeah, but everybody who owned it, like the company's gone, man. Like you are the
Right. Yeah,
last.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
That one day those samples will be the same thing.
Someone's
One
gotta
day those
have it.
see-through samples. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it should 1,000% be you, but in a UV protected display
Yes,
case.
I will be protecting it with my life and armed
Yeah, yeah.
guards, obviously.
Of course.
It
Well,
is
you've got an
America.
attack dog. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people bashing down your door.
Yeah,
Like,
automatic weapons.
yeah. No, completely. So, how, just keep moving. I don't know. I live in the Highlands of Scotland. We have a very different like
No,
to
I
like
love it.
the outside. I've got like deer in the garden, like and loads of ticks. It's completely
Oh,
different.
grout ticks are trouble.
They suck, but
Yeah,
it's their
they
garden,
literally suck.
as it turns out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're back, but
Hmm.
it's a seasonal thing. Anyway,
Well,
we're off topic
yeah.
again. But yeah, so you're doing the YouTube thing. You've got your collection of crazy Polaroids. You still working quite closely with Brooklyn Film Camera as well? Like, is
Yeah,
that?
so BFC is sort of, I would say, I'm the creative director at BFC.
Mm,
So what that means is when any sort of decision is made on a look of something, which is pretty much like half the things BFC does, whether it's a new product, whether
mm,
it's a poster, whether it's a video, whether it's a in-store like sign or anything, like that's the stuff that I'm working on.
mhm. Cool.
I was initially before that, I was in charge of more or less in charge teaming up with Kyle, who is the founder,
Mm,
founding like the new Brooklyn Film Camera. Like the company essentially restarted and we opened up a physical retail location, and I was like deeply involved in designing it, and literally to the point of like the sketches for like the shelves and custom made shelves, and designing all the graphics for the signage, and getting the hand painted sign commission from our designs. Like that's the stuff I was doing. And now, just because of like the flow of life, it became too difficult to take on all of that still. And plus,
mhm.
the store was up and running. Like I
Yeah.
felt like we accomplished the mission.
Mhm.
So now I'm mostly doing like video and design, and so I get to be a part of the family without
Oh, cool.
having like too much on my plate at once and drowning in it.
Oh, amazing. No, that's really good. I think I like that. Sounds like a healthy approach to projects as well. Like
Yeah.
having a kind of like it's bounded in some way, and there's kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's
Yes.
not. It's a sort of different to like your Edwin Lands and crazy
Sure.
creators who are just like get a phone call like right now we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And
And then
so
you eventually
have you?
burn out.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go off and do research into which colors people see first and things like that, which
Sure.
is one of my favorite things of his. It's
Yes.
great. He's awesome. He would have been an incredible person to meet.
I know.
Just like so many things. I love that he's immortalized in the beginning of In an Instant in every
Yeah,
single
his little
one. It's
silhouette is always there.
his silhouette and the little quote, and
Yeah.
snap the button and have the picture and the whole bullet. It's incredible.
It
I
keeps
love
him
it.
fresh in people's minds because we're so far removed from Edwin Land's Polaroid. But
Mm,
in the same token, I feel like we're not, because the spirit of the Impossible Project, aka Modern Polaroid, is taking some of his principles about like the challenge of undertaking impossible tasks,
yes.
and trying to achieve it anyway. And even if some people think that the new Polaroid company has been slow at
Mm,
becoming good enough to be considered quote unquote Polaroid film,
yeah.
I still think I know the people that work in the factory. I know like the
Yeah.
people who work at Polaroid. I know that's what they're trying to do, And so like the mission is still, Edwin Land's vision is still like strong, even though it's a totally different scale with totally different people.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I mean, I've read a few books about him, and it just sounds like people apart from the fact that he hired really broadly and had really interesting
Yeah,
ways of like filling the team with people
sure.
who at the time wouldn't necessarily have been hired into a business like that and from different backgrounds. And it all
Yeah,
speaks to kind of like my belief in like small teams doing great work and like bringing in different perspectives and different
totally.
backgrounds and different things, and that being really helpful. It's sort of, you need that broad. It's Steve Jobs gets too much credit as well, but he used to say the same sorts of things. Like, you need that broad interest in things. If you drop out of college and sit in calligraphy class, then the Macintosh has fonts, right? And then that's better for the world. Like,
Right.
there's a through line there, and I
It's
think
true.
the polarizing, a tragic accident leading to invention of polarizing lenses, leading to
Yeah.
the invention of incredible creative product, and those first SX70 videos. You just reminded me, just talking about it. Like, you watch one of those videos now, you would still want one, like
Right.
that first, like with the animation of like the mirror inside, and it shows you how it all
Oh
works,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the kids playing with the wooden blocks and the photo through to show you how
It
great and
looks like it could have
satisfying it
been
is.
made today
Yeah.
because the camera is so futuristic.
Still.
Yeah, it like is so, and it's still almost unthinkable that it
Mm.
exists. When you show someone an SX70, they still are like, "What the hell is this?"
Oh yeah.
Which, to have people in the modern day who are exposed to a billion things on the internet every day hold a
Yeah.
camera and say, "What the heck?" Like,
Yeah.
holy cow, this is so cool. That's amazing. And the fact
Yes.
that this was 50 years ago that this was designed, it's so cool. So, big
Yeah.
love.
No, it's still a magic trick for sure.
It is.
Um, I think the thing about like talking to you, I was expecting like every lens is going to be the SX70 lens, but we should probably segue on to your second choice, which unexpectedly A is a Canon, and B is like super wide at
Yep.
20 mil. It is like f2.8, which to me is like the one true focal length. Like for me,
Yes.
sorry, the one true aperture. Because
Yeah.
like
It's a
my favorite
baseline minimum.
lens, my favorite lens of all time is the 35-8. Like, it was on a Canon
Oh
point and
yeah.
shoot that I had as a kid, right? And that to me is what photos look like.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
My
yeah, yeah.
favorite lens on my Leica is a Zeiss 35-8. On
Yeah.
my Sony that I had before was the Zeiss 35-8. There's a pattern. They're usually
Sure.
small and unreasonably sharp. What's the
Right.
thing that attracts you to the Canon 20-8?
So it's a very interesting. It has an interesting place in my world because many years ago I was trying to find a wide angle solution, and the most common modern kit lens sort of wide angle thing that you would buy from Canon would be the 24
Mm,
28, or yeah, there is a 24-18 now, but whatever, there's like RF stuff I'm not fully caught up on. But
mm,
um and but I discovered that there was sort of a discontinued 20mm 28. I don't know why they don't produce it anymore, and I bought it, and it like changed my life. I mean, I use this lens so often. It's so immersive.
mm,
It made me fall in love with the wide angle like perspective on the world, and being able to be so close to your subject but still be able to see so much context.
mm,
And it's so unusual, I guess you would say, and it almost is like lomographic in some ways. Like, you
mm,
get this dramatic vignette. The colors rendition is so punchy,
mm.
and I picked this lens in particular because I feel like it's the marriage of my digital life as well. Like, this is the
Right.
kind of lens that I would use for actual like digital video jobs. I haven't
Yeah.
used it that much with film, to be honest. I have,
Mm,
but it's not like my go-to for 35mm or anything necessarily. But
yeah.
I feel like I have this relationship with it that is still very important. And just as a quick shout out to, you were talking about 35 mil, the
Mm,
35mm 1.8, that is RF lens that Canon made for the like new R series cameras,
mm.
that would be like a tie almost, because
Right.
that lens has the stabilization paired with the camera's stabilization. It's almost like you're holding a gimbal when you're filming with it. It's unbelievable. But the 20 being so wide also kind of has that sensation.
Yeah.
You feel less movement when you're holding it. So
Yeah.
I just love that lens.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And this is exactly why I wanted to have these kind of conversations, because like there's magic. I can see it in your eyes. Like, there's magic in it. Like, there's like,
Yeah.
and it's even more satisfying when it's something that someone else sees. And it's I might as well have met you pushing a trolley along the street with tin foil wrapped around your head. And you're like,
Yeah.
man, you haven't seen it.
You haven't
Let
seen
me
the
show you this.
22.8.
Yeah, it's flipping wild, man. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's really cool. So that's like your desert. That's one of your desert island digital.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
feel it's very unheralded. I've never
Mm,
seen anyone else with it. I don't
no.
know why. It's such a good lens. And like, I do feel most people defer to 24, and 20 is just that extra bit of like wow factor.
Yeah.
And I'm never, ever gonna sell it. I've had so many situations where like I've maybe gone like a year without using it,
Right.
but I would never sell it. It's
No.
just like you're like you said, like the desert island digital lens.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way about my 35. I sold it. I let a guy get into my head in a shop,
Unbelievable. Can't believe he
and
did that.
yeah, no, I'm an idiot. But then at least I bought it back for less
Okay,
from
there
somewhere
you go.
else. So there is that. But
Yeah, there is that.
yeah, it's a magic black and white lens. It's beautiful. But yeah, that's really cool. Have you, because you're talking about the digital there, like have you ever made any books of any of your work? Like I know you've been featured in some of like the Lomo little things, like
Yeah,
Off You Go
I've
and
made
stuff.
I have one book, Roadside Hudson Valley, which was
Mm,
a Polaroid book.
right.
And I'm sort of in pre-production on a book right now. I have a body of work that I've been like chiseling at for probably like 4 years,
Mm,
which is sort of this like Americana exploration and sort of
right.
like what still survives in America from an era that's like not only was sort of a lie, the idea
Mm,
of like the American dream and this like space age uh, perspective and
hmm.
optimism on the future that was sort of like almost a guise for what was really happening in America. And
Hmm.
all those relics that are still around. Every time I go to a city, I'm on the hunt.
Yeah.
Even if it's for work, I carve out an extra day to like drive
Yeah.
out there and like find stuff. And so I've been doing this for a while now. So I have a large collection of images that I do want to publish. So I'm talking with like a publisher right now. We'll see what happens, but
Oh,
that would
cool.
be like the next publication. But I've only really dropped one book proper. I've
Yeah.
designed and made other books, but they haven't been like sold.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
so cool. I will look
Yeah.
forward to that one. Is
That would
that where
be
all the neon stuff fits in
yes,
as well?
that will
Like, it's
fit in
part of
there.
that?
And I think
Yeah.
that it would be a multi-formatted kind of collection. Like you'd have Polaroids, you'd have medium format stuff, you'd have like 110, you'd have just like strips of 35. Just I
Mm,
want to make it like
mhm,
a hodgepodge because America is such a hodgepodge, and I want it to
mm.
kind of feel like almost like a road trip document in some way. So
Yes.
we'll see how that all maps out. But
Yeah.
that's like currently in pre-pro.
Yeah. Many road trips all
Yes,
combined together into this one glorious book
exactly.
of, yeah, that's very cool. That'll be a nightmare to work out which camera shot which thing after a
Oh
certain
God,
point. Like,
yeah,
which of
that's
these,
true.
when long running projects like that, when you've
Yeah,
got no metadata to play with.
it's true. Yeah, no
Yeah.
metadata.
Yeah, I will say, have you come across? I like to talk about this because most people haven't heard of it. Lens Tagger, the plugin for Lightroom.
I have heard of this.
It's
Um,
ever so good.
so that's good for what, analog lenses?
So the thing I use it for is because it's the way they try and get you. The modern Leica lenses have a little thing that talks to the camera and tells it what lens it
Sure.
was. The older
Yeah.
ones obviously don't have it. So what Lens Tagger lets you do, rather than go out and spend $6,000 on a 1.4 Summilux, is you can go and you can set what the lens is, what the aperture is. You can add the serial number and things like that. And then there's another tab, which is where the magic is, which is for film stock. So you can put your
Oh.
detail in about your film, what speed it was, whether you'd pushed it or anything like that. You can even list the lab if
Oh, that's
that's
cool.
if you want that as well. So from taking, when I scan my Polaroids, I don't tend to use much 35
Hmm.
mil film, although I do shoot a little bit. But when that
Hmm.
comes in, I can tag that. But certainly mostly for shooting the Polaroid, so that I know whether it came out of my 680 or
So you
whether
would
it
tag
came
it
out
after
of
the
the
fact?
I1. Yeah,
Okay.
scan it,
Yeah.
and then I mean, you might scribble a note on the back or something like that, just so you
Right.
know.
Right.
But
Right.
most of the time, those of us with a tuned eye can see whether it came from like a
Sure.
680 or an I1. But like maybe if it came from, like, if you were comparing the I1 to like a 600 series
Yeah. Years
general.
later, you might
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
like, I
yeah.
don't know what the hell this was on.
Exactly. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
I do
Same
have
with
a
like a Go.
weird ability to know that, though, I will say.
Mm,
I always kind of know. I mean, I also can just I feel like part at least with Polaroids, part of the, immersion is, like, it playing out like a memory. Like, when I look at the
mm,
photo, I was physically there when it came out of the camera, and I can put myself back in that place, which with digital, I never could do. It was like, you
yes.
don't feel
Yeah.
that same through line with, like, reality. It just feels like pixels or, I mean, it literally is, but data.
Yeah.
Whereas this
Yeah.
actually exists, and it exists because I was standing there, and it existed then and only then. So I do have a sort of a weird ability to remember that stuff, but I still might hop on. Are you sponsored by Lens Tagger?
No,
Is
sadly
this
not.
SpawnCon?
Yeah, sure, why not? I'll just make up sponsors every
Yeah,
week until
that's a good idea.
someone hops on the bandwagon. I mean, why not? You know, fake it till you make it. I think
Exactly.
the awesome open source project for Lens Tagger, I think it's open source. But yeah, it's very good.
Cool.
It's free and unreasonably capable, and I've never had it not work. It's really great.
And use promo code PrimeLenses10 for 10% off your first order.
Yeah, and see, now I've got you saying that as well. So
right.
Just
You have that audio
legitimizes
clean.
it. Exactly. Yeah, clean enough. If I put a bed on that, cut it a bit awkwardly. The question now in the age of AI is, what else will you have said?
Oh,
right,
I
like
know.
actually, this is just a convoluted way for me to create like an AI duplicate of you.
You can just completely recreate me from everything I've said so far.
That was why I got you to read that passage from The Great Gatsby at the beginning.
Oh yeah, okay, that was why.
Yeah, that's why everyone does that.
That was why.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks, Ian. This is the greatest podcast you've ever done. You know, that kind of, but Lens Tag is very cool. Look it up. I really like it. I think you also helped me out when I was peak Polaroid scanning fanaticism and buying expensive scanners. When you in one of your videos went, "We're scanning Polaroids here. Like, let's not go crazy." Like, your guide to that. You know,
it's true. Like I have a V370, and it's a very, very cheap. I mean, I think it's like a $75 scanner tops. And some people have V600s and like the higher end ones because they're scanning medium format film. I completely understand why you would own that with the caveat of doing that. I don't scan medium format film with flatbed. So if you just start scanning Polaroids, you can get like a really inexpensive scanner. All it's doing is imaging the film. And you don't need to, because it's not like 35 millimeter film, you're not trying to pick up like grain size details. Like if you scan a Polaroid at 600 DPI, you're essentially getting the full like available resolution of the picture itself. So like you don't need to go crazy with it. And it's probably for the best, because if it breaks, you can just get another one. It's not so bad. If you mark up the glass.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the thing. It saves us from scanning at like 1200 DPI, 32-bit color TIFFs. And it's like, what am I even doing?
As much as I sometimes do scan at 1600, I will admit.
Sure, but then you look at it for a bit, and then you're like, oh, maybe it's like all those photojournalists, right? And they have their big Canon for work, and they have their M around their neck, and like, this one's for me. Like, you just
when I do a big scan, it's just for me.
Yeah, exactly. Just to look at in private and just pixel peep at your own Polaroid.
No one else will ever view it at that resolution.
Yeah, I do have this kind of like, now we've moved house last year, and I have this kind of like fantasy project that I want to build, which is a big light box with a blown up Polaroid in it, and I want it to look like a Polaroid.
Interesting.
So like it would
backlit?
be, so like a big, so either a TV turned sideways to be the thing, or like a kind of 80s style stupid big plastic Polaroid.
Interesting.
With a kind of, because I think it would be really cool. Like it'd be really cool to like have like a sky or something like that, something that sort of in theory, in reality, would have generated light. To have that with a nice
something
big
naturally
thick,
luminant.
Yeah. Because I went, I used to work the game studio I worked with. We did Minecraft Dungeons and went to Mojang's studio in Sweden, in Stockholm. It was amazing. Wow. And they have this table in one of the areas where there are lights above the table, and the lights are big, blocky, and they look like a sky in Minecraft with big, like blocky clouds, and they kind of light up and sort of sit over the table. And I was like, that's really like, the world should have more of those kind of stupidly engineered.
Absolutely.
For no reason other than, like that should exist.
That's things that shouldn't exist are usually the best things.
Yes. Yeah. Or things that like there's not a justification to exist. I love the saying that everything in your life should be either useful or beautiful, and ideally both. And so, but I feel like that carves out enough room for both.
It does.
That means you can have forks and you can have giant Polaroids that light up that exist for no good reason.
We're allowed to have that.
Yeah, you just never talk about how much it costs.
No. You would never talk about that.
No, or display boxes, for see-through Polaroids that you
we can't talk about that.
Came to you by certain means.
Sure. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. Smuggling them out. Is that where the story came from? You were like smuggling things out of.
It was sort of I've built a bunch of connections from the Polaroid just the fact that I was there, and that's sort of how it came about. It was like, we have these transparent cameras. We feel like you would be the person that would cherish them the most. Like, do you want to like buy these, basically? And it
Mm.
was from like an individual who worked in the camera department. So, but it was one of those things where it's like, how could I not? But to your
Yes,
point, it's like, it's not even useful because they don't work.
they can
But
never work. Yeah.
but still, it's like,
Yeah.
but they're so beautiful and like
Mm.
historically beautiful because there's like so few of them. So
Yeah.
sometimes you just need stuff like that.
No, completely. I think sometimes you need a non-working Keith Haring that just needs,
Exactly.
it should have been saved just so that you know that it exists. No,
100%.
I have, my desk is covered in them. I love. Do you remember the Surface Duo? Not a
Oh yeah.
camera, but yeah,
Oh
like
my god.
reading books on these things and taking notes on them, a delight.
Okay,
They,
well there
they
you go.
for no other reason than just like I can scribble. It completely failed as a product for all
Right.
sorts of complicated reasons.
I'm glad it still works.
Oh, it's great. No, it's really good. They made a really good thing. It's criminal that
Wow.
people just didn't go for it at all. It's
Right.
a really good one of those. But I will say, like all really cool things, it is less good in a bunch of ways. Like
Sure.
a slab flat thing. It's like the folding mechanism of the SX70, right? Like
Yeah.
it is just unreasonably clever to have achieved that and to have engineered that. But
But
if
there
we're
are
all being
caveats.
honest, if we're all being honest,
Yeah.
like the ability to get it out, be ready, you like, hang on a minute, I'm gonna open
Yeah,
this
yeah.
up, and oh, then the moment's gone, right? Like
Right.
there's,
It's
and
true.
it probably took them years longer as a result as well,
Oh
because
my
it was just
god,
so
yeah, for sure. So much more
unbelievably
expensive to
hard.
do that.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's ridiculous. But anyway, we digress. So from complicated, hard to make things to a potentially much easier to make thing. So talk us through your final choice of lens.
Yes. So the final choice is the Nikkor 300 millimeter W large format lens. This is a huge piece of glass, probably definitely the largest lens I own.
Hmm,
And this was the first and only lens that I bought for 8x10. I don't have any other lenses for 8x10. It's the quote unquote normal lens of 8x10. You could say that
right,
like 300 millimeter on 8x10 is similar to like a 50 millimeter on
right,
on 35. And when you think about what that means, it means that you're getting the like compression of 300 millimeters, and the like you're getting the 300 millimeter focal length, but you're seeing so much more context because of
yeah,
the size of 8x10 film. And so it's to me like the perfect exhibition of the magic of that format. Like, you could shoot at 300 millimeters, which would usually be like a telephoto focal length,
yeah,
but you're getting a person's like chest up when you're standing like 5 feet away from them. It's crazy.
yeah,
And this lens ended up being, at first I bought it and it was like, oh my god, I just spent a lot of money on this 8x10 stuff. Hopefully that's not like the worst choice I ever made. Thankfully it didn't end up being a bad decision, because not only was the experience of shooting with that lens and shooting with 8x10 opened up a lot of doors photographically and experientially. Like,
hmm,
even just a friend visiting and they're there for a day and it's like, I would really like to take an 8x10 photo of you. You end up having, even if it's just for 20 minutes, this like special moment of setting up the camera, and they're like experiencing it, and they're looking down this huge lens barrel and you're looking through them on the projected ground glass on the back, and the image you make in that moment is so inherently special and feels more special maybe than any other kind of portrait, just because of the process.
hmm,
And so it ended up being sort of integral to a business that my wife and I started recently called Analog on Hudson. And it's essentially, so like I was saying, we live north of the city, not too far, but far enough where like people move here
hmm,
and are doing that to not live in the city.
yeah,
And so we end up being surrounded by a lot of folks who used to live in Brooklyn, used to live in Queens, used to live in Manhattan, and they liked some of the stuff in Manhattan and Brooklyn and the boroughs, like artistic things, but they didn't want the like craziness of it. And we realized we can be like an artistic avenue for people that have moved away but still want that.
hmm,
And we started doing these like pop-ups where we would bring the Intrepid, we'd bring the 300 millimeter lens, we would bring them into a cafe or bring them into a clothing store, just because we were like building relationships with people locally. and we would do like photo shoots all day. Just you can come in, get your portrait taken, and the experience of people like seeing it, realizing A, that film still exists, B, that like you can still use a camera like this.
Mm.
um, it opened up a lot of doors. The camera and the lens itself ended up becoming almost a business card.
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
our favicon on the like on Google. Like if you look it
Nice.
up, because it's like you immediately recognize that those bellows and that lens
Mm. Mm.
equals something
Yeah.
special. And it ended up becoming a very important object because we just opened a new studio that's a street level
Mm.
studio that you can walk into and have your portrait taken, and that camera and lens are always set up, and anyone can come in and always check it out, even if they're not getting like a portrait. And I'll show them the ground glass, I'll show them the magic of it. So yeah, that ended up being something that I will never sell and will always stick around.
And the film's still available, which is
Oh
also
yeah.
the incredible thing, right? Like just being able to get hold of that. How hard is that to get it?
So
Presumably
8
some
by
production.
10 sheet film
Mm.
is very easy to get. It's always in stock. There's many different varieties of it. Some that
Cool.
are actually very affordable. Companies like Cat Labs, which is a store in Boston. I don't know exactly how they've wrangled this, but they've been able to use like other companies' production lines and basically make their
Mm.
own film. So they have 8 by 10 that's available for like extremely affordable costs, like $4 a sheet, which is
Wow.
it's like twice the amount of a single Polaroid sheet, so it's not
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like
yeah.
that much. And so yeah, it's the sheets are very, very easy to get. The thing that's really hard to get is the Polaroid 8 by 10,
Right.
and that is the biggest shame of limited availability, because I find I'm most at home when I'm shooting that format.
Yeah.
It is so experiential and immersive. I know I've used those words a bunch, but it's the ultimate example of that. You can take the picture, carry the negative over to this machine, and you're like, okay, here we're doing this now. And you take the positive, which is like the translucent sheet, you're feeding it into the processor. You're like, you can hit the button, and like you get the person to hit the button, and the
Mhm.
sandwich is made through a machine, and like you can watch the whole thing happen. I don't have to disappear and develop film and scan it and all that. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
all there in front of you. And that film is a lot more hard to come by because it's a loss for Polaroid to produce it. It
Right.
it simply doesn't make money,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
costs them more money to make it than they can ever sell it for. But when they do make it, it's very special, and we hoard it, and we have a
Yeah.
few boxes of it, and they just released a duochrome version of it, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's our bread and butter, I'd say.
Oh, that's amazing. That's such a cool thing to do as well, to like to for people to just encounter it,
Yeah,
right? Because hopefully that's you want to expose people to things like to amazing creative things that they've never seen. And that's just
yeah,
like there's a finite number of those left in the world that people
sure.
are still using and still shooting, and sort of the quality of the image that comes out, like the detail in it
Oh yeah.
is just like with big things like that, it's staggering. I've seen in museums some of those giant Polaroids,
Oh
like the
yeah,
ones
yeah,
that Andy
yeah.
Warhol used to shoot, like bigger than 8 by 10.
Yeah, the 20 by
And
24s.
right, yeah,
Which
just insane.
I'm still hoping to shoot on a legit Polaroid 20 by 24 camera. I did get to shoot on the 20 by 24 camera that Ethan Moses made from Cameradactyl.
Mm,
That was a crazy experience. But eventually I would love to use a Polaroid one because they're all specially designed. They have rollers, and it's
yeah.
basically like you're pulling the sheet out manually. It's so cool. And then it peels apart. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, don't shake that one to dry it off.
No, do
Like, just have a
not shake that.
like, I find
Please
I spend
don't.
my life telling people not to shake Polaroids. Like, I
It's
feel like,
true.
telling
The
people that Outcast lied to them
I
is
know
very
it's like telling people that Polaroid had to release a statement after that song came out, clarifying that you shouldn't
forgot
shake
about
it.
that.
That's like the best information you can transmit.
But it's difficult. Have you found a way to convey that information to people without feeling like you're like
Yeah.
some Karen?
Yes,
'Cause I feel
that
terrible
is a
doing it.
really interesting thing because we do a lot of these pop-up
Mm,
booths. So we experience, like 20 consecutive people in the span of an hour doing it, and then telling every single person you probably shouldn't shake it because it might damage it. You feel like
yeah.
an absolute goober. Like, but it's like it's legit true. You shouldn't be being so
Yeah.
chaotic with it. It's very sensitive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, like, this is not big for business. Like,
No,
put
it's
it in your
absolutely
pocket,
yeah,
keep it warm and dark for, like, 15
absolutely.
minutes, and to be honest, it will look better tomorrow morning, but
It's
leave it
true.
face down. Yeah.
100%. It's funny though when you get to I don't have you shot pack film ever?
No, no, never have. I
Because
missed
then
it.
you can actually shake those. That's why
Yeah,
you would shake it. It's because
yeah,
it's wet.
yeah, yeah.
And
Well, see, that's the thing
it's always
when
a pleasure.
it's at parties. I've managed to kind of make being a photographer at work like I'm sort of the person they know. Like I'm running around with the
Yeah.
camera a lot of the time, and so at parties I get to work quite often to pay for some film. So
Oh,
we'll get it
cool.
ordered
That's
in and
great.
stuff, and they'll run around with my SLR or something, my 680 or whatever,
Yeah.
and then handing out Polaroids. Like people now expect it, and they come to me at parties and ask
That's
whether I've
cool.
got an instant camera with me, and
Yeah,
usually I
yeah.
do. And so it's great because they'll feed some of my film habit as well, and
Sure,
giving
yeah.
them away. But it is that thing of like explaining to people why, where this came from and how much
Mhm.
of a revolution the square format was. That
Totally.
like it's integral, right? Like it's all
Yeah.
there and it's dry to the touch straight away, and that the opacifying layer didn't work, up
Right.
until like 6 months before release. Like, oh
Right, right,
god,
right.
stuff like that, and people just it doesn't compute to them. They arrived in a world where this existed, so they just think it was always there. It's like growing up with the internet and
It's
smartphones.
true.
Like, let
And
me
it's
tell you.
also the other challenge is, like, you and I and many people that really care about this stuff are kind of like nuclear bombs of information, and you have to, like, be careful about how much you're, like, about to explode on someone. Like, a lot of people are like,
Yep.
"Oh, so, wait, what is this? Polaroid still exists?" And I'm like, "Where should I start? Should I start with,
Yeah.
like, yes, you could buy it at Target, or should I start with, like, in 1934?"
Yes.
Like, what and you have to read how much someone will care because there is
Yeah.
such an incredible history to it. But yeah, we're living a charmed life even being able to transmit that information.
Yes, exactly. I've definitely got about a third of the way into the Edwin Land was walking with his daughter and couldn't tell her why she couldn't see the picture straight away, and then got, oh no, I've lost the room.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
just
no.
seeing people slowly sort of, like, divert their gaze.
Yeah, that's the point at which you have to kind of get the camera and go, look, you just press the button and it pop. Like you
Yeah,
need to
yeah, and
kind
then they're
of.
like, "Oh, okay, I'm back in."
Yeah, 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 exactly. No, it's really, really great. Yeah, I have the new Sofort. That's
Oh,
quite
you did? The
charming with its
Sophore too.
little, yeah, with the little
There
thing.
was
I
a
was
Leica representative at Policon Bay Area, like, he
was
did, like, a
there?
demo, he gave one out. We and one of the
Wonderful.
events from Policon was in the Leica store. Like, we
Huh.
had, like, almost like a private access. It was
Yeah.
so cool. Couldn't believe that
Yeah.
Leica was so down to do that with us.
They're a funny company,
They
man.
are.
Like I like that if the rumors are true, the original Sofort existed because their chairman was in a board meeting and was like, "Can we do something fun? I feel like we
That's
should do something
amazing.
fun." Right. And that because he saved the business years, like they were going to go out of business in the
I
90s,
remember
and he
that. Yeah,
came
yeah,
in as
yeah.
like chairman and investor, right? And he seems to have steered them pretty
Sure.
well
Yeah, yeah,
ever since,
absolutely.
right? Like they seem to be doing well, and excuse me, the last couple of years they've managed to actually grow, which is cool.
Yeah.
Because then they're not selling like millions of
No,
units,
no, no. They're
like
not a
there's
volume company. They
no.
require loyalists to be, like, a
Yes.
part of their ecosystem.
Yeah, but I think it's funny. It made me think of it when you were talking earlier about like the story that comes along with being a Polaroid fan,
Mhm.
and the story. The kind of like you could use any number of cameras to
Right.
make images, right? Like there's any number of those that exist, but one that comes with a story and one that comes with like an
Mhm.
interest and a bit of a like, you know, oh, there's this one for this and use this lens for that, and oh, these guys they used to use this and that was really crazy. And I just think there's the stories that come along with that. I
Mhm.
think why people are so fanatical about Leica and so fanatical about certain, like you get it with certain models more than you get it with brands like the GR, the Ricoh GR.
Mhm. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
has like it's one of the most incredible cameras ever made, right? Just
Sure.
ever. Like all of
Yeah.
them are. It's tremendous, right? It's
Right.
unreasonably small, incredible image quality. They have a look, right?
Yeah.
Like they've taken some incredible street images, and so it's just like if you can latch on it, if there's one of those that speaks to you, then you're a goner. Like
Right.
that's how I feel about the M.
It
That's how I
sucked
feel
you
about
in, you're
Polaroids.
done.
You look through that viewfinder for the first time, and you're like, oh no, this is going
Yeah.
to be expensive,
This is gonna
and
be the
that's
end of
it.
me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely going to finish this call and buy an I2. Like I
Oh,
know that
good,
that's going to
okay, I'm
happen. That's
glad. It's already added to your cart. Use promo code
practically.
PrimeLenses10 to buy your first, I2.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just and then with the when I'm paying for the divorce lawyer, I was using the
Sure,
promo code.
yeah.
It was Ben's fault. Like just if
Exactly. Maybe they'll get a promo code for the lawyer. They could be a sponsor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I can sleep on your couch, right? That's a thing that we
Sure,
can
yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
couch, 100%.
yeah. Excellent. No, that's really good. Well, well, thank you so much, Ben. Like this has been just a flipping massive treat. I was struggling last night to do prep because I was so excited. to talk to you, because I like your videos are great and the stuff that you make and put out into the world, and hearing about you taking those 8x10s and lugging all that gear around just to kind of show people the wonder of this stuff. I think you're doing the Lord's work. It's amazing.
Oh, I appreciate it. And I'm so happy to be on the show. I really appreciate you having me on. I've always loved communicating with you virtually. And this is technically virtual, but we're like
Hmm.
sort of hanging out right now. Like, I
Yeah.
appreciate being able to see you. And I hope one day we can somehow do this in person.
Yes. No, me too. Definitely. I'm in the States a couple of times this year.
Oh,
So
well,
I will be in New York probably around May. So
well,
I'm
let's
trying to
make that.
carve out
Just
a
come
bit of
for
that
PolaCon
weekend.
NYC.
Oh, there you go. When's that? When's
It's
PolaCon
like
NYC?
the middle of the month, like the 16th or 17th or something.
I'll be a bit too early. What I'll do is basically we'll kick off PolaCon. If you can have a ribbon
Yes,
ceremonially
we'll have
set up,
day zero, day
we'll
negative
just
zero.
we'll pretend that I'm famous in the UK for Polaroids. And we can just
Exactly.
come and like, this is Johnny Polaroid
Oh my
from
God.
London.
Well, I'm gonna be able to take your 8x10 then. Isn't that
Yes.
a beautiful ending to
Yes.
this? That I can
Oh,
actually do that
amazing.
with you this
Yes.
year. Okay, well that's
Yes.
great.
We'll arrange that.
Yeah,
Brilliant. All right.
awesome.
Well, thank you, man. Have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank
And
you. You
I
too. Have
will
an
see you
amazing rest
soon.
of your life.
Oh,
No one says that.
no, they should.
They
Let's
should.
start. I'm going
Yeah.
to end
Okay.
every episode with that.
Have an amazing rest of your life.
Yes. All right, mate. Take
All
care.
right.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
My eternal thanks to Ben there for taking part in the show. It was an absolute joy to sit down and talk to him for an hour about all things Polaroid. And I did go out and get an i2 after this conversation, and I am completely obsessed. I've shot with it so much over the weekend. It's amazing. Go and look at my Instagram. This thing's going to cost me a fortune. It's all Ben's fault. I may yet need to sleep on his couch. But my thanks to you for listening, and if you've enjoyed it, tell a friend, and we'll see you next time.